Dr. Kacey Gibson. I'm a family medicine physician in Pensacola, Florida, and I've been asked to come on here and talk a little bit about natural disasters, how that affects us, our team, and our patients, and as well as what are some of the tools that we could use in order to help everybody process through one of those situations. So a little bit of background on myself. I personally grew up on the Gulf Coast, and I use the Gulf Coast kind of generic because I have lived in New Orleans, I have lived in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and I now live in Gulf Breeze, Florida, which is outside of Pensacola. So my experience with hurricanes throughout my whole life is pretty extensive. It's something that when you're a Gulf Coast native, I hate to say it, kind of get used to. It's something that as a child, you didn't think much of. Your parents just knew that it was hurricane time and you got your supplies and you boarded up your house. But then now as an adult with my own children, it takes on a whole different experience when you go through a storm of that size. So I just want to talk a little bit about how going through a natural disaster can really affect our mental well-being, and how are we going to deal with that, and how are we going to help guide our patients through a situation like that. So I am also in another unique situation where I have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder in the past, and I've received treatment for that. And so I have a very healthy understanding of how that can affect us and affect the way we operate, the way we think, the way we work. So back in September of 2020, I was actually living at a rental on Pensacola Beach when Hurricane Sally decided to hit Pensacola Beach, and it was not supposed to hit Pensacola Beach. And so nobody was really prepared for that storm. And I do remember at 4 a.m. just kind of pacing the hallways as we had 7 different buckets set up, collecting water, having to pour those out. And at that point, my husband had taken the first duty and I was on second duty right when the eye was coming through. My children were asleep at that time, thank goodness. And we were in the structure that was swaying back and forth. And it's a very surreal feeling when you know that you are actually in harm's way, that the outcome could be pretty bad. And then to actually witness and see that devastation of what happens after a storm of that size. And so I just really want to talk to people as they're going through these natural disasters that having a lot of different emotions, anxiety, insomnia, grief, not knowing what's next, maybe feeling a little hopeless, that those are all normal. And when we're possessed with any kind of stressful situation, those can all be very normal emotions. And I think a lot of times people don't want to say, I'm feeling something right now. When we talk about acute stress disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder, this is usually when we're in a situation that we feel that our life has been threatened or we've witnessed somebody else's life threatened. And so a lot of times everybody goes straight to physical abuse, sexual abuse, war, those kind of situations. But living through a natural disaster is definitely a situation where you can feel that your life is threatened, or coming back to an area and witnessing that devastation, you can really feel that other people's lives were at risk too. And so, one, I just want to normalize that feeling that intense anxiety, that hopelessness, that where do we go from here? Again, like I said, that's normal. And experiencing that for probably the first 6 to 8 weeks, that's what we call acute stress disorder. And that is a normal response to an intense event. When it goes beyond that, that's when we start talking about PTSD. And I really encourage people that if they are having a hard time getting over some of those preliminary emotions, that they should also seek counseling to help themselves process those feelings in the very beginning. The sooner you recognize those feelings and emotions, the sooner you process them, the sooner that you're going to be able to move on. Because when we start talking about PTSD, this is when we start to get hypervigilance, we start to have flashbacks, we may experience nightmares, we might find ourselves a little bit more on edge. And it really can leak over into our regular life, our work life, our home life. And that's when it becomes a little bit harder to treat. And so, first, when you're in one of these situations and you're talking to your team, just make it okay to say, we're not okay. We don't know what our resources are. We don't know where our supplies are going to come from, but it's okay. We're going to make it through. We're going to come up with a plan. But I think naming the emotion and saying that it's not okay is really the first step. And making sure that everybody on your team doing a self-check, how is my team doing? Is there somebody who might be struggling more than somebody else? And maybe taking them to the side and talking to them about some processing therapy that can be very helpful. The next thing is that as we go through these disasters and we start opening up our own clinics and we start seeing patients or having patients come to us, a lot of times they're going to be going through all of these emotions and not knowing, where do I go from here? And they might not recognize that this is what's actually going on. So a lot of people might find that it's silly for them to bring up that a natural disaster like this has affected them so much. But we must also remember that losing everything. My hometown was hit by Hurricane Katrina. My dad was living in New Orleans at the time. And so many people lost everything: pictures, memories, family, heirlooms, everything. And so this is very devastating. It is a grieving process, just as if you lost a family member. And so one of the things that I think that we can do is we can help them process some of these feelings and help them work through this and figure out that this is what's going on by using the Bathe tool. And the Bathe tool is just really something simple that you can incorporate into your everyday appointment. It can be done in minutes. And that goes first with B, background. Why don't you tell me your story? Tell me what's going on. Because during a natural disaster, everybody's story is different. We don't know where they were during that storm. We don't know what they experienced. So really say, tell me your story. Next is going to be, how is it affecting you? This might be a great time to find out what their symptoms are. Are they sleeping? Are they anxious? Are they having panic attacks? T is going to be troubling. Well, what's troubling you most? What are you having the hardest time with? What's that big hurdle? Next is going to be H, and that's handling. So this is going to be insight. How do you feel like you're handling it? They may feel that they're handling it well. They may feel that they are not handling it at all. And that's where we come in to help them through that process. And lastly is going to be E, and that's going to be empathy. Now, when we all are experiencing a natural disaster, it is very easy to want to hijack that story and say, I know exactly what you mean. I'm going through the same thing. This happened to me. But I think it's very important that when we're trying to help our patients through these situations, that we just keep it at, that must be really hard. Or, I'm sorry that you're going through this. I know this is hard. And try your best to just leave it there and not hijack their story. So these are just a couple of techniques, things to be on the lookout, things to help you recognize what's acute stress disorder, what's PTSD, how do people walk through these natural disasters, and hopefully that this will help you make your interactions with your patients more meaningful. Thank you all so much.